Welcome to the first session of the stability and mobility part of your athletic development. Today we'll be talking through your first component of stability and mobility, what it is and why you should use it, and how we want you to implement it into your session. I'm Shane and this is Annie, our subject. So we'll talk you through the components of each one. Stability and mobility are an important part of athletic development and they coexist within your sport. Each one is important in its own right, but we want to empower you to make the decisions on how much of each one you want in your program. Stability is the amount of control you have of the range, and then mobility is the amount of range you have in a joint. So some of you will need more stability, some of you will need more mobility. Depending on how you are and how you're feeling through these exercises, we want you to do more or less of each one. We're going to start with stability and the exercises around stability that are going to help you in your sport and your range. A lot of the stability exercises are going to be challenged on feet because that's where your sport is played. Your sport is played on feet, and for the most part, we'll challenge it on feet. So the first exercise is a single leg balance reach around a clock face. So stand on one leg, preferably we'd rather you be in barefoot or in socks, not in shoes. The reason being is a lot of the cushion of the foot is taken away from the stability aspect of the foot. So on bare feet or single leg or on single leg stance, so stand on one leg, reach forward to 12 o'clock. Now the important point here is that the hip is forward. It's not a squat where you're sitting into it. You're remaining quite tall as you reach. So you reach into 12, you're making way around the clock, whichever side you're on. So she'll go 11 and come back to center, and then to 10, back to center. We're all going all the way across to 7 on one side and 5 on the other. We're leaving 6 for now in this phase. So as you'll see here, trying to control and rotate with the movement. It's important here that you don't stay fixated and forward. We want the knee to be able to control the motion in and out of the movement. So as she rotates, she is rotating and she's reaching, touching the floor. The other common mistake here is that you put your weight through the foot. So you go all the way through, you put your weight through the foot, and then you come back. It's taking the demand out of that left hip or right hip to control the movement. So as you go around, you're trying to get that control. There's a little bit of a squat pattern going on here. I want to keep this hip extended as you reach. It's important that that happens and it doesn't become a squat. We get to that point after. So reaching all the way through. So we're going to do one clock face, which is done. We'll do a second clock face and move on. Now, like I said at the start, we want you to decide which you need more of. Do you need more stability? Is this a challenge for you? Do you find that in a game that these things are something you need to work on? Then we'd like you to add more of these exercises to your program. Good. So that control of the knee, that knee trying to find the stability is exactly what we're looking for. We need to get away from the idea that the knee doesn't move into valgus and out of valgus. We want to teach it to go there and come out of it. It's very important because our sport will demand us to be there in these ranges, and we have to be controlled in those ranges and be able to come out of those ranges. That's really important that you develop that skill in your technique. So you're going to trial these, and each time you do them, you become slightly better. You have to give the body a chance to recognize what it's trying to achieve, and then you can make the corrections. What we're hoping you do each time is to stay controlled with the movement, keep your hip forward, reach as far as you can, and then come back to center. You don't need to necessarily go as far as you possibly can and lose control and then fall onto that weight. Go as far as you can reach. An analogy here I'd use is imagine you stood on a stone in a river, tip in the river, you're making a ripple in the river, but you're not putting your foot through the water. Does that make sense? Okay. Next exercise. It's a single leg balanced toe touch. Okay, so on one leg, you're reaching down to the floor and then come back up again. It's good range here by Annie. She's got good range, and what she's doing here is hopefully is keeping the trail leg, the foot that's not on the floor, close to our center of mass. Don't want it out compensating for the movement. We want it close to our center of mass. She's reaching to the floor and coming all the way back up. Notice that it's nice flexion and a flexion of the ankle, knee, and hip. She's come all the way up, and make sure you fully extend at the top. You always come back up the center. That's very important. You don't stay in a flex position as you do the movement. So come all the way back up and then back down again. We'll go for 5 reps here and then change sides. Now the repetition is all about teaching the nervous system to do the movement. There isn't a prescribed amount of sets and reps on this in this moment, in this component of your athletic development. This is all about challenging the movement, getting good quality reps, and then recognizing when you're going too far and too much and stopping and taking your breather. So 5 reps is a good starting point here. If you feel you can do more, please continue to do more. Okay, so we're back on the right side. We'll do it again. We'll do the right side again 5 times, and then change 5 times. All the way down and reach, that's good. All the way back up, down, and all the way back up. So fully extend the hip on the top. It's very important. There's key characteristics here that are important, that you're reaching, you're stabilizing yourself, but you always start on this center point here. If you're at home and 5 is too much for you and you're doing 2 quality reps, absolutely perfect. Take your time and just make sure you're getting good quality repetition in the movement. Good. And slow it down. Well, the important point here is that you don't use momentum to get you through the movement. Slow and controlled actions will cause the musculature to take control, and you really have to embed that into the program. So quickness and speed and letting gravity do the work is not what we're looking for. Nice controlled motion each time. Okay, good. On to the next one. It's slightly challenging it, but now on different planes of motion. We did a forward reach. Now we're going to do the forward reach, but further. So there's more activation of the glute because you're tilting that pelvis more forward. So there's going to be more length of the glute. So as you squat down, you're reaching forward. You're coming back up. But next time you go down, I want you to go to the right side and then up again, and then go to the left side, which Annie will demonstrate now. So we'll do it twice through. So reaching forward, 10 degrees, more forward on your reach. Come all the way up again to center. Go, yeah, good. All the way back down. Reach to the side. Again, that trail leg, you see the way it went out to the side, is trying to counterbalance itself. But we want to challenge the glutes, the muscles, the hamstrings, and the lower limb in the complex of the calf to control that movement. So keep that leg close to your body and then go again. You'll find that some plane of motion on the front and the left or right is going to be more challenging than another, and that's something to look at. So we'll look at Annie here again when she goes on the inside, quite good control. We go on the outside. If you feel like the hip is bailing out, so too much excessive motion here coming out and driving the hip forward, close the angle. So don't go as far with the reach, go closer to your toe to get less of this bail and more of a sit-down approach into the movement. Yeah, change legs. So again, squatting down like before, touching and reaching in front, good, and then all the way up, and left and right. This is the component of your leg development that needs to be explored. This is all human movement. This is challenging joints, challenging bones, challenging muscles, and you have to let the nervous system develop a pattern to correct itself. Part of this will be looking for good movement and correcting good movement, but a lot of this is teaching the body and letting the body go into motion and coming out of it controlled. As long as you feel you're in control of the motion, the semantics of the movement does not particularly matter too much here. I want us to explore the stability of the movement, and that's the most important thing in this phase. So there are 3 stability exercises for you to try at home. Vary the repetition as you feel fit, but that was the kind of starting point for your exercise. So 5 repetitions on one, and on that one is around the clock face twice, and on the last one we did each one twice. So we're going to go into mobility now. We're going to do 3 exercises of mobility again, and each time in each week as we go through this component, every time you'll get a new exercise, a new thing to explore. It doesn't mean that these exercises become null or are not warranted in your program. They're very important all the way through, and you find an exercise that is beneficial for you, you should always put it into your program. Okay, so we start with 3 mobility exercises. The first one is anterior hip. Okay, so you get into position on a mat preferably, put one foot forward, hands across your chest, and try and stabilize your core and your hip so there isn't an arching. So you stabilize your hip and just lean into that movement as far as you possibly can. The stretch here should be on the hip flexor. You go in, 3-second hold, and then come all the way back out into center. Correct yourself if you feel like you're arching or bending too far forward. You want to maintain a straight line between the shoulder, the hip, and the knee on the floor. Okay, so you're leaning into it, not arching forward or arching back. You want to maintain that position and then just sit into it as far as you possibly can, holding that stretch and then coming out of it. We'll do 5 times, so 3-second hold and then come back. Good. Yeah, always come back to center, always to that starting position. Good. And then change, yeah. So we do the other side. So often I find a lot of athletes stay in flexion a lot of the time. If you're one of those athletes that stays in flexion and doesn't fully extend, it means you can't engage your glutes as well as you possibly can. So this could be a good exercise for you if you feel like one of those. But again, like we said at the start, you might be an athlete with excessive mobility, and this mobility stuff may not be good for you. We want to empower you to make the right exercise choice as you progress through your program. Yeah, 5 repetitions. Now, do another round if you feel at the end of this you want to do more, but we want to give you a selection of exercises to choose from. The next one is your hamstring mobility exercises. So a lot of you may have tight hamstrings. So straight out in front of you, toe can be up. For now, we'll talk about the variety of tweaking exercises, about foot positions and everything else to get different engagement. But for now, it's toe up. The first one, you're going to reach forward as far as you possibly can, and then come back up the center. So when you reach forward, try and reach to your toe level. So it's not to the floor, it's more to your toe level. So do that one again, Annie. So reach to your toe level. Good. And then come back up the center, and then you're going to go left or right as you reach. Left or right. So you're going left first, and then come up, and then try the other side. We're going to do 3 rounds of that. While Annie's going through, I'll explain why we're doing 3 reaches. You've got 3 hamstrings. It's not just one. The hamstrings are made up of 3 different muscle groups, or muscles, sorry. And each one has a different insertion. So each hand reach biases the stretch on the hamstring, depending on if it's more medial, so inside or outside of the hamstring. And each one will tackle each hamstring slightly differently. So give you a better range and a better stretch of each hamstring. Good. And find the range here whereby you're not compensating. If you feel like you're starting to bend the knee a little bit, you may be reaching too far. Try and keep the leg straight, that's important, and then find your range within the movement. So we go on to the other side. Same again, reaching forward. That's good. And again, this is how you feel. Do you feel like this exercise is targeting where it should target? And if it isn't, make slight adjustments between the foot coming up or down, or how far you're reaching with the movement. Good. Excellent. Now, the last one we're going to do is the adductor stretch, okay? So another problematic area for footballers and hurlers is our grinds, right? So sometimes our grinds don't allow us to get into the movements we want to do because they become tight and short. So this is an exercise to lengthen up the adductors. So get into a position where you put the leg out in front. The important point here is that the ankle is rotating in, so it locks in the tibia or the ankle complex. Is very important that it locks in. I'll explain why in a second. So you're in a position here, hands across your chest. Important point here is that you're fully flexed, fully extended. You're not flexed from the hip. If you start flexing forward, it's going to take the demand off the adductors, what we don't want. So you're in this position. You're going to rotate away from me, Annie. Rotate away from me. Correct? And then back in again. What it's doing here is stretching the adductor in 3 planes of motion. So it's stretching it from the proximal end and the distal end, so the closest to you and furthest away from you, and also in 3 planes of motion, because you're like twisting it like a towel as you do this. So it's locking at one end and you're twisting at the other end, so stretching the hamstring in 3 planes of motion, the adductors in 3 planes of motion. Good. If you're finding this in the lower back, just shorten the lever length, okay? And then maybe not go as much. Changing hand positions will change the structure and the feel of the adductor. So make sure you're feeling it where you should feel it as you progress through this exercise. Okay. So do the other side, same thing again, lock in that foot. Make sure that hip is fully extended before you start. The hip needs to be fully extended, otherwise you're taking the load off the adductors. So you're reaching towards me, that's good. Yeah, we go for 5 repetitions on here. And just make sure you do feel it in those adductors when you do the stretch. Okay, 2 more. That's good, keeping the hip forward and fully extended, being very tall and upright as you rotate. Perfect. Okay. So there's 6 exercises. 3 stability, 3 mobility for you to try at home. And really the emphasis at the start of the session was about trying to discover and empower yourself where you are along the continuum of stability and mobility. Because some may be more appropriate for others, it's about you discovering which is best for you. So have a play with each of the exercises, see which feels the best, and it might be a mixture of both, or it might be all that you need in your program. But really the onus is on you to empower yourself to discover what's best for you moving forward as a player. This is the advanced program of the strength and power element of the athletic development program. We're going to talk you through the exercises in your program. The first one we're going to start with is a goblet squat. So Aaron, if you want to pick up the weight. So looking forward to the exercise and rep range, this phase, we're going to do 3 sets of 10 on the first exercise. So I'll show the goblet squat. Many of you may know this, but keeping the chest or the weight close to the chest is very important to counterbalance the hip going back. The most important thing here is good range and good stability in the range. You can see from the side here, we want the hip to drop as far as the knee. So we're trying to get that 90-degree or that parallel angle of the thigh with the floor. So you're going to do 3 sets of 10 on this exercise. So if you want to start, buddy, do 3 sets. We're going to do 10 repetitions first. A few coaching points. Make sure the feet are nice and wide, so they're about between hip and shoulder width apart, I would say, for most individuals. When you get to the top, make sure you're fully extended, brace in, take a deep breath in, brace your trunk, and then descend into the movement. And as you're extending up, release that breath to get into that range. When you've done 10, you can stop. That's good. Nice, good range, nice, good movement. A few errors. I know you're an advanced group, but a few errors may be that you lean too far forward. Just make sure you're sitting back. The weight transfer should be onto your heels. We're resting for about 60 seconds to 90 seconds. You can use, in this exercise, we're going to use the bench just to show you some basic constraints to make the movement better. So if you want to try with the weight, we've got a couple of seconds before we start, but I want you to focus, just come close, I want you to focus on sitting back into the movement. So there was a bit of trunk lean on the first rep, so making a box like this will counteract that forward lean. So you're sitting back into it, you can see he's in a better posture, upright. So you can see, you can sort of relax a second, so we've still got a few seconds rest. Now it may feel, and this is the first exercise program, it may feel like you want to continue and go quickly through it, but it's important that we give each other some rest and before we go on to the exercise. So this first set is going to be 1, and then the next exercise will come as supersets. Okay, so we can do it again. So just do our 10 reps again. So you can see and you'll notice he is more upright in this posture because he's sitting back into something. The weight transfer is better onto the back of the heel, the back of the front foot. So it starts in the midfoot, the weight transfer, and transfers back to the heels as he's sitting back into it. So that just allows him to get into a better posture from a trunk point of view. So if you're comfortable without it, obviously do without. It's better without it because it challenges the musculature better to let the movement happen and to get out of it. But this is a simple strategy you can use if you find that you're just leaning too far forward. Same thing again, brace yourself and then down. And when you're coming out, release the breath. Good. Perfect, really good. He's coming all the way up. He's putting the weight through the heel. It's perfect, and get your rest. Just a short variation, so we want a goblet squat or a front squat in the first exercise. So if you have 2 dumbbells at home, you can use these, and these are going to be positioned up here, and you get into the same pattern as we're looking before, just a different way of loading the movement. You can use the bench. I'd recommend for you to use the bench on this one just to kind of add that nice posture of the trunk as you get into the movement. So we can crack on with the last set then of the exercises. So again, that's getting him to in a nice position. It's getting him nice and low, and it's taking out that forward lean, that trunk forward lean, because the weight is now in front of the center of mass, so it's inclined to lean forward into it. Having something behind encourages in that nice posture up front. So again, this is the third set of 10 reps. Good. That's good. So the tempo here is perfect. Nice control, slow down, a little bit quicker on the way up, but nothing too crazy. And obviously, if you go down too fast, all you'll do is rely on momentum and gravity and your mass to get you down there. We want the muscles to control that movement coming down. That's perfect. That's the first set done. The next exercise now will always be supersetted, right? So for the advanced group, I'd like you to do the lunge complex as a walking lunge, okay? So you may not have a lot of space at home. You're going to choose to do weight. You can do this free weight if you want to. But all I want you to do is if you face the camera, you just face the camera, and make sure your feet are wide enough, so they're wide about hip width apart, and then you're stepping into that lunge. Too narrow will cause this exercise to be too much of a stability demand, and it won't allow you to get into ranges we want to get you into. So if you take a step forward, that's good, and then walk into the next one, perfect. Walk into the, yeah, and then if you have limited space, you can either walk back or lunge back, whatever you want to do, okay? So with the 10 reps again here, so it's 10 reps on each side is what we're looking for. So it's very important, that transition and that stability of that leg once it steps out, transferring into that force is what we're looking for. So that momentum transfer is really important in this exercise. Good. Just make sure you do 10 reps on each side. Looking forward all the time on these exercises. You can see his posture here. We're going to look for see if there's any slides, the hip left and right, but everything looks good. Everything hitting the ground properly. You done your 10 reps? Perfect. Okay. So we're on to the lateral lunge now. I'll just move this out of the way. So we're on to a lateral lunge, right? So with the lateral lunge, what we're looking for is the feet remain forward. So when I step, my feet are forward. That's the most important thing. You can do a weight with this one. So you'll do a weight close to that foot and then come back. Then I want you to stay on the same side. If you have a weight, stay on the same side and just lunge back into that. So we have a model to demonstrate. So stepping out to our left or right, stepping in. So you can see here there's some slight limitation to the movement, okay? So getting better. So step even further, step even further, okay? Try the weight on the other, on the other hand. Yeah. Yeah, and left, step left. Okay, both hands together. And then try it. Okay, so back on the same hand, the first hand you had it on. Yeah, step forward. Okay, so what we want, so better, this is better. I want you to take a step, and then just stay from here, lunge into that side. Okay, so take a wide step and lunge into the left side. Yeah, go again. Reach the dumbbell in closer to the foot, so straight hand. Good, and look forward, that's better. So try and find a balance here by we're getting to the range. The same exercise can be done. We're just taking out the momentum of the step now. If you can and you feel comfortable and you're getting into these good positions, do it in a walking lunge, as in stepping in, sitting in, and then coming out of it. But for this position and this particular model, I think we're getting good benefit from this because the leg is nice and straight, you're getting really good range, and you're loading up that exercise as well. Now we go on to the other side. So this is appropriate for him. If you feel like you can step into it, feel free to step into it. But here, we're getting what we want to see. And it's all about, this is the focus of this point, is we're always trying to get the movement to look right. That's the most important thing. We don't want to load bad movement. We don't want to encourage dysfunction. We want to load good movement, and that's the most important thing. If you feel like weight is actually a hindrance to you, do it body weight. Absolutely fine doing this body weight at this stage. It's all about the movement transfer. So this is good for him. Take a breathe. Or breather. So we do the same thing again. So walking lunge for him is appropriate. It's very good technique in the forward and the sagittal plane. Then when it comes to the frontal plane, when you add load and you add momentum, and remember when you step into it, there's ground reaction forces coming up the body, which can restrict the movement. So what you find is as you go through this movement, if you feel like you're not getting into the right patterns, just regress the exercise integrity to get what you want out of it. And that's very, very important. There's no ego here. It's not about lifting the heaviest weight or being the most complex exercise. It's about getting the most important benefit and adaptation to your program. It's more important what's happening internally in the body than what's happening externally in the body. But I mean load. So you can get far better stimulus from doing the exercise properly than you can just increasing the weight. Okay? So let's go again. So make sure there's a good starting position. So feet a bit wider, buddy. Feet a bit wider when you take a lunge. Yeah. So when he takes the lunge, he needs the feet a bit wider. Yeah, that's better. So now there's a better wide base support when he does the movement, rather than it being too narrow. If it's too narrow, it makes it more challenging for a stability exercise. If you increase the stability demand, mobility is decreased. So you don't get the good range what we're seeing here. So that's good. So 10 repetitions on each one. Very good. Going into our lateral lunge again, but now we're going to do the static. Again, like I said before, if you want to do it as a walking lunge, feel free. But for right now, what we're seeing, I want to do it in this range. Okay, so that's perfect. We're getting good load. We're getting that right adductor loaded up. We're getting some glute activation on the left side. There's a lot happening in this. There's a lot of motion in this. There's a lot of movement in this. A lot of muscles required to do this moving properly. And the coordination of all the muscles is very important to get this successful. So as I mentioned, function is far better than load. So make sure the function looks right, the movement looks right before you start loading it up. Here we have an appropriate exercise. That's perfect. That's good. Keeping the chest looking forward. Keep looking up. Do your 10 repetitions. Take your time. What I like about this is the feet are forward. If you start externally rotating the feet, it's going to take some of the load off the musculature we want to work right now. Okay, so externally rotating the foot is going to take the load off the adductor. Good. Let's take a breather. Same thing again. So again, just find the space, the walking lunges. Again, if you find the walking lunges, if you have limitations of the walking lunge and you feel a bit of knee pain or whatever, it could be because of the dorsiflexion. So if I'm taking a walking lunge, right, and I don't have dorsiflexion, don't have that flexion forward, and I'm just dropping down, I might experience knee pain. The reason why that is the coupling of the tibia and femur on top isn't opening up enough space for the patella to slide up and down, so it could cause pain. So just make sure you're not in any pain doing these exercises, regress it, so you might have to find yourself doing this position here, so you're up and down rather than momentum. But if you can manage this exercise, like we're doing here, it's a fantastic exercise for you to do. So we'll do a last set on this one. So good walking lunge again. So again, feet wide. Yeah, walking lunge, creating that base of support. Good. And keep the arms straight as well. So keep them locked out. Good. And lunge. That's good. Stepping into it, knees towards the floor. Just with the knee towards the floor, right? If you find that your knee is just hammering the floor and hitting the floor very uncontrolled and it's just hammering off the floor, then you might have to lower the speed of the movement. So take your time with the movement. It's important that we don't just crash off the floor. We don't gain stability from the knee hitting the floor. We get stability within the body, if that makes sense, within the system. Okay, so back on the last set of this lateral lunge. Again, feet forward, very important. Trunk upright. You can see from the start, we try to manipulate the body position of the hand to get him into the right position. But we're finding now we're getting good mechanics and we're getting good buy-in and we're getting good loading up in this position. So find that level where you feel you're working, but not at a compromise to good movement. Key points here is this trail leg is straight. It's not bent, it remains straight, and the toes are pointed forward. The final thing is the trunk is upright and you can see forward. You can see whatever is in front of your badge, you can see it in front. If it's too far forward, it blocks it off, and then you know you're leaning too far forward. So 3 major points. Feet forward, that trail leg is straight, posture is upright. Very good. That's great. Good, and you put the weight away. Okay, so the next bit is the glute complex. So if you want to sit down, lie down. So how the program's worked already, we started on a double leg, then we went into our lunge complex. Now we're going to go into our sort of posterior chain work, right? And then the last thing is our plyometrics and our power work. So that's how the program's structured. Double leg into split stance, or lunge complex, so a single leg if you like. Now posterior, and then pogos and hop and stick to finish the jumping and landing element. So here, most important thing is setup, right? So hands out to the side, put your palms down, so that's it, and you can get yourself in a good position here. So try and get 90, 90, 90 relatively, so a little step forward out here. And all you do, so there's a lot of complexity to this exercise, and there's a lot of breathing required, there's a lot of rotation of the pelvis to get it in a neutral position, and there's a lot of complexity from each individual. But as a basic rule, basic principle, without going into the detail too much, is get into a good position, get good stability from your hands and your feet, and then just push down through the feet with your heels to get your hips up into position. Now continue this for 10 reps. What we want to see here is the kind of feet remain flat on the floor for now, just for this technique, yeah, and all the way up. And you maintain a good posture throughout, okay? So you don't want to arch back, so go up a bit further. Now that's almost too far, right? Okay, so not always is the maximum range what we're looking for. We want a nice straight line between the knee the hip and the shoulder, nice flat line all the way through in the 10 reps. That's what we're looking for. If we see too overarching back, we're obviously going to leave us in a bad position. Control the movement on the way up, and certainly control the movement on the way down. This is our first exercise to develop the posterior chain, which is the hamstring and glute complex. So stand up into a T-walk. So quite a difficult lift, but this is an advanced group, so we want to challenge you on the movement. You know the T-walk, so go on the side so we can just see from a side profile point of view. Quite difficult to get into these positions, but try and get into a T-walk, so he's nice T-spine and then come down again. So you're going to do 6 reps of this, 6 reps on each side, 10 of the glute and 6 reps of this. It's a nice good T position. You're trying to get him as flat, or you as flat at home as possible, and keeping that leg, see the way it's bent? We want soft knee, so come up again. So softer knee, so not locked out knee, just a soft knee. So it's almost perfect, this exercise. And then work the balance of this leg. Okay, 6 each side, 6 reps each side. Get into a good posture. And this will happen. This challenges the stability of the movement, which is exactly what we're trying to do. So each one, take your time with the movement, take your time with the control of the movement, get into that good posture. And as you'll find, as you progress through this exercise, you'll find yourself getting better and able to get into deeper and more extreme ranges. And that's what we want. Controlling those end ranges is very important to the protection of the hamstrings, but also for the development of the hamstrings. So back on the first exercise again, on the floor. Just give it a few seconds before we start. So what I'm saying at home is around 60 seconds between exercises. Because we're supersetting, what we'd say is you're kind of getting a benefit of a rest from the other exercise if you like, but we still want at least a minute of a break in between the exercise, but not too long because it is movement. There's not a lot of load going on here. But as the exercise goes up, as it starts increasing a little bit more as we progress through our weeks, we will take a lot more time in between the reps to make sure we're fully replenished and recovered before the next exercise. Okay, so glute bridge, all the way up. Again, looking for that posture, 10 repetitions. The hands out in that position just provides a bit of stability for the athlete in order for him to get that range and that position. Good, feet are remained on the floor, all the way up to the position where we get that nice straight line. Good. Take your time. We're going to talk in time about correcting the pelvis and getting into a nice neutral spine, but just a quick reference while we're there. So if you come all the way down, just when you get down to the floor, just make sure the back, you can't fit your hand underneath the spine. So an overarching spine on the bottom can cause you to put your hand through. You don't really want that. You want the lower lumbar spine flat on the floor. And then come all the way up, all the way down. And when you come down, come all the way down. That switching on and off of muscles is very important. Okay, so onto your T-walks. So getting muscles to switch off and back on again is an important part of that exercise. Okay, so on one leg, challenge the stability and strength and obviously the mobility because you're going to go into range of this motion. So each time you just challenge yourself to go that little bit further, that little bit wider. We have no load necessarily here on this one, but we'll get to that point. But again, there's enough challenge, there's enough integrity to this exercise to do without load. So getting comfortable and really strong and really stable in this exercise is going to benefit you in the long run when we add the complexity through load and speed in particular of hamstring development. That's good. That's good. Sometimes it's hard to know where you are in space. So one of the things you could do is maybe record yourself, see how you are, see if those positions, you hit those positions. And if not, then you can coach yourself almost to get into those positions. It's important that you can nail that straight line, straight leg coming back. And also from the front view that you didn't see, maybe we don't want that externally rotation. If you're doing that, it's another common error of that movement. If you're going back and all of a sudden you find yourself externally rotating as you go into that deep flexion forward, then that is not right. We want a straight leg and then straight back if we can. But it's very hard to know where you are proprioceptively, so maybe record yourself, look at yourself back. It's just a little tip if you wanted to see yourself or mirror someone coaching you. Okay, so we go into the last set of this exercise. So go up into a glute bridge. Again, remember, we're working the posterior chain, so the hamstring and glute complex. get into a good position is the first thing. Make set up is right, both from front on and side on. Make sure everything's in a good position, and then drive up and get your 10 reps. Good. Now you'll note there's a little pause at the top. Now I didn't cue that necessarily, but it's important that we just hold and stick that position at the top. 1 or 2 seconds, that's fine. Then come back, but make sure you're all the way down to the floor again, and those muscles switch off, and they have to engage again to create that motion. That's great. Well done. Well done at home as well. These are some challenging exercises. Some of them might be very familiar with this. We have probably a variety of people who are competent in different exercises. So wherever you're at, wherever you find yourself, don't worry about being perfection at the time or things looking perfect. It's all about progression. And when you go to do these again in the second week or the second session, you'll find yourself a lot better at these exercises. They just take time. You're basically teaching the nervous system to be able to coordinate itself to get into these positions. Yes, there's an element of strength and control and stability and mobility, but it's also a movement pattern that we want to get used to. So that takes time. Very good. Again, you notice just a bit more flexion of the knee happening now, which is obviously just a little bit of fatigue coming in. So obviously it's his last exercise and he's done it quite a lot. So just make sure you're kind of maintaining that, not bent knee, so you don't go too into flexion. You're kind of extending without locking out the knee is the only thing on there, but that's perfect. Okay, last point is the jumping and landing. Okay, jumping and landing. So we got pogo hops and we got a hop and stick. Okay, so the pogo hops. We want to take out the contribution of the hands. A lot of the times I see a lot of people, and one common error when do plyometrics is the hands contribute so much to the motion. That's fine. On the game, you're going to use your hands to generate force, but if we can put a bit of emphasis on just the lower limb, getting all the force, then we're going to develop it better. And then when we contribute the hands in, we're going to get more purchase out of our movement. So hands across your chest, pogo hops. You may have done these before. So feet closer together, so it's quite close together, not touching, but close together. And all you're going to do is generate some force into the floor, but keeping the toes up. Toes up is very important. So if you want to try a few pogo hops, see where we're at. So the toes come up. So try and get some more height. Good. And toes up. That's better. Very good. 10 repetitions. Perfect. Now, there's 2 things here. One is the contact time. So balls your feet is the contact. Balls your feet. The speed of the contraction. So how much force can you apply, but then how quickly do you apply that force? Okay, it's important. So we want to minimize the contact time and we want to maximize the jump height. Okay, so if you can get those 2 balanced up, that's what we're looking for here. But the toe up is such a crucial part of this movement. Without toe up, you end up landing plantar flex, so foot forward. So if I hit the floor and plantar flex, and it takes me a long time to absorb and then generate force. So we want that toe up. So maybe do it from the side on here again. Hands across the chest, and go up into toe up. Good, toe up, good, perfect. Great, so 10 repetitions. We have 2 sets. We'll do 1 more. We're going to superset them, but actually I want to talk you through the pogos a little bit, and then we can go on to the last exercise. So keep the toes up when you do this. Again, like we've said this 1,000 times. The last thing that doesn't get spoken about enough for me in plyometrics is the amount of force, and we said about the contact time and how quickly do you apply the force is important. But another component that is very hard to measure and it's more qualitative is the timing of the force. Okay, so we've all hit a ball in our career where the ball just flies without so much force, without maximum force, and it's all about the timing of you apply the force. So when you're doing these, I want you to feel your way into it. It's almost thinking how much force. Feel your way into it, and you'll feel certain jumps just hit this sweet spot like you're striking a ball and generate a lot of force. And it's that timing of force is a very crucial component to all this stuff as well. So yes, the force and contact time, but also it's the timing of the force that becomes a real characteristic of success in plyometrics. Okay, toes up, that's good, 10 reps, keep going, good, toes up. Very good, excellent. Now, that's tremendous. And what you find a little bit of you guys, you see the little knee bend when he lands on the floor. That's obviously ground reaction force coming on the way up, and then there's mass momentum on the way down, which causes a bit of flexion of the knee. That's absolutely fine right now. We'll try and steady the ship a little bit and keep the leg straight, but there'll always be that little bit of a bend in the knee because you're experiencing a lot of force down to the floor, which is force back up again. The force of your momentum coming down is going to cause some breakage in the chain somewhere, and that little knee bend is not a bad thing necessarily. Okay. We did a lot about force production. The last thing is accepting that force, right? So the hop and stick is our first journey along a path to accept force, right? So when we go back to our return to sport, we're going to find a lot of forces to exert, to accelerate, to sprint and all that. But to decelerate and change direction, we need to be able to absorb forces. So I'll just remove the mat so there's no instability there. So you're just going to hop out in front of you and stick. So you're going to hop, same foot, same legs. You're going to hop on the left and just stick that balance, okay? So on the same foot, same leg, yeah, and stabilize. And then walk back in, do the same thing again. Now, you as the athlete, you as the player, keep going, buddy. So I'll do 5. You as the athlete, you as the player, you challenge yourself on the height, on the distance on this. So the further high up you go, the further you jump out, the more challenging the exercise is because the ground reaction force is more. You've jumped higher, so more ground reaction force, and you've got to stabilize. That sticking is very important. It's like that first mechanic of deceleration, because what you're doing is you're stepping out in front of your center mass, absorbing all that force. So you want to see this happen. Now, obviously, the harder you challenge yourself, just do 5 reps on each side. The more you challenge yourself on this, the harder it becomes, and then maybe the louder the landing is. But we don't want no noise, because that's not always beneficial to the exercise. But we don't want too much of a heavy landing. The mechanics of this movement are more important than the sound of it, but we definitely don't want too much of a heavy landing when we land, okay? So try and soften that landing up as much as you can. So that was 1 set. We've got 2 more sets of it, and that's the last exercise of our strength and power. I hope you see the rationale behind the exercises that we're trying to do. So we went through a lot of force production. Now this is force acceptance or force absorption. You don't need too much of a long rest on this one. So if you want to go again after about 45 to a minute on this one, because it's more about movement, feel free to, and it's absorbing the force. Yes, it's quite an eccentric demand on this one. But over time, slow repetition, low reps on this one. So over time, we build up the repetition and build up the complexity of it. So second set, again, start off slow, relatively acceptable. You're getting good range there. And then challenge yourselves on the jumps. That's good. So each side, 5 times each side. That's good. One more thing that's always interesting in the athlete when you find yourself doing it, notice where your eyes are at, okay? If you can look forward when you're landing, that's far more transferable in the long run to just looking at where the leg is and almost like seeing your pattern. Because I want you to rely on the proprioception of the body to give you feedback as opposed to your visual representation. Because when you go back onto the pitch and when you're back in your sport, this is all subconscious motion, and it's got to be the receptors within the body that give you the feedback. So when you do land, look forward. Good. And see if that changes the mechanics of it at all. Okay, so there was a slight change. I didn't see all the exercise, but there was a slight change in the last mechanics. He started to come onto the balls of his foot. We want to stick and then stabilize with our foot on the floor, just because that's what it's going to be like when we decelerate there and then have to change direction again. So we want the foot on the floor. That has a biomechanical chain reaction up the chain, but that's for another day. Okay, so the last one, 5 on each side. Hopping, sticking, good, perfect, really, really good. That's a good repetition. Go again. Excellent. That's good. Again, like at home, if you want to challenge yourself on the height and the length of the jump, feel free to do so. But it's that sticking element is the key component of this exercise. Stabilizing yourself 2-3 seconds and then taking a step back. If you have a long corridor or more space, feel free to do this 5 hops in a row. But the main thing here is you stabilize first and then catch yourself again and then go again, rather than you hopping through it as a 5 series of jumps. Yeah, so stabilize yourself and then go to it. Good, perfect. Okay, so that's the end of your strength and power session 1. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you see the relevance of it. We'll progress the exercise as we go through and as you go through the weeks and the activity phases and everything else. But I hope you enjoy it and see you again very soon. Okay, as part of your strength and power program, you'll notice that a lot of the exercises in the program are a lower limb focus, and there's a reason and a rationale for that, both from an injury point of view and a performance point of view for your sport. But we recognize that some people want to train upper body and some core, so we've added in each week and each phase, we'll add in different exercises we'd like you to go through. So stuff for home, I've put together 4 upper body exercises and 4 core exercises for you to do. First one is a press up. So normal press up, which you've done before, obviously try and get into a nice good position, shoulders over the arms, trying to get as low as you can, all the way to the floor and press up. Important point here is that you get good range. If you're not good at them, the reps and sets don't really matter too much on this phase. Just get yourself into good movement position. If you are more advanced and you want to challenge yourself on a press up, my recommendation is that you change your hand positions, right? So in our sport, we want to be strong in different ranges and different positions. We don't know where we're going to utilize our shoulder or our hand complex. So on this one, you have your normal press up, but now you might try right forward and then come all the way down. Try left forward, come all the way down. You also want to try and look on the frontal plane, go wide or go narrow and down. And then also on the transverse plane, get into neutral position, internally rotate one hand, down, you can internally rotate the other, or externally rotate and down. Now all that's going to do is change the position of the shoulder and the chest, and going to demand slightly different recruitment of muscles, and that will benefit you on your sport. But start with a press up, that's the first exercise. Second exercise is a single arm shoulder press. So if you do have weight, you have the luxury of some weight at home, get into a nice position and just press over your head. Try and go over your ear, over your head, so you're not out in front, you're not too far back. So keep yourself forward and press over your head. So all the way up. You can see there I did a little dip to drive up if you want to, or if you're comfortable, just driving, pressing over your head. Second exercise. Now the third exercise is a bent over row. There's many ways of doing this. You see a lot of people into this position, hand over chest, or hand under your shoulder, and then driving up to the belly button. There is that one. There is also into this position and driving up into the belly button. Or if you don't have something, you can always stabilize yourself with your hand, with your feet, wide base support, and drive up in the same pattern. So there's a bent over row. And the last one I want to do is a chest press. So obviously you won't have a bench, or if you do have a bench at home, feel free. If not, and you just have some weight, get yourself into a nice position on the floor. Feet, keeping your spine on the floor and just pressing over your head. So nice control down, pressing, up, control the movement, down, and pressing up. So there are 4 exercises for your upper body that you can use. Each week we'll progress it, or each phase we'll progress it, just to give you some different variety of the upper body. But remember, the main focus is that we train what we're going to use the most often, and we train it from an injury point of view and a performance point of view. In addition to your upper body program, you have some core exercises that we'd like you to try also. These are 4 different core exercises. We'll progress these each week, each phase. You have a bit of variety in your program. So the first one is a plank. You will have all done this, or if you haven't, just make sure you get into a nice good position in the plank. So make sure your shoulders, hips, and feet are in a straight line and holding that position. Now you can lean forward. If you want to complex it, you can rotate. Some people like to rotate, but it must be all in control of the movement. So that's one. Side plank is the second. So get into a nice position, get your feet together, and then just drive up from your hip. Again, that nice straight line is important when you get into that movement. Again, you can add complexity with your hands, with some rotation, if you feel like you need to, but just make sure you're in that nice controlled position. The next one is a nice variation of the plank. So you're here, you can walk up onto your palms, walk out as far as you possibly can into a nice good controlled position. And then the same thing on the way back and down. And the last exercise is a Russian twist. You can do it with weight or without weight. Without weight can actually be very beneficial and very stimulating if you don't have it. So my recommendation is to rotate as far over your left or right shoulder as possible, and you'll feel that. If you have some weight, what tends to happen is the range becomes less. So it's important that the range is there. So try it without weight, and if you have some weight, you can add in the range. But important point on any exercise is that you have length and you have tension. So too short a range is not going to benefit you. You need length and you need tension.
We're now going to take it onto a cool down stretch just to finish off the workout. Okay, so for the cool down stretch, you're going to hold each stretch for about 30 to 45 seconds. And you're going to flow through a routine here from standing position down onto the floor and then back up onto the feet. Okay, so Henry, we're going to just start off with a stretch for the posterior chain, so along the calves, hamstrings, glutes, into your back, and we're going to stretch through the chest as well. So I'm going to get you to take your hands behind your back, interlock your fingers, and then you're going to pull your arms back to stretch through your chest. From that position, feet pointing forward, just about shoulder width apart, you're going to hinge forward at the hips and try bring your arms up as high as you can to the ceiling. So you're pulling your hands up to the ceiling and trying to keep your legs nice and straight on this. Good. So we're going to hold here for 30 seconds on each stretch. Really pulling those arms up. And really exaggerate that pull of the chest. And as you hold this movement, try exaggerate that pull. Pulling back through the shoulders, pulling the hands towards the ceiling. Good. So just holding for another 5 seconds, really exaggerating that stretch and just using a nice slow, controlled breathing pattern here, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Okay, keeping that position, Henry, bring your hands down onto the mat. Good. You're going to walk forward. You're going to drop onto one knee. And you're going to bring the opposite foot forward. And we're going to take a hip flexor stretch here. Good. So you're going to lean forward. And what you're looking for here is a nice stretch on the front of the hip. If you're not feeling that stretch, you can just walk your front foot forward a little bit more. If you're too far back, you're not going to get that stretch. So your knee here in front doesn't want to come over the toes. You're going to walk it forward and hold that stretch. Again, holding each stretch for about 30 seconds. If you can hold it for a little bit longer, you can go up to 45 seconds. Okay, let's keep that position, and we're going to take it now to the hamstring on the opposite side. So you're going to sit back, you're going to allow the toes come up towards you, and you're going to reach forward towards the foot. Okay, so as you're performing this stretch, you want to reach your hands towards the foot, but don't force the stretch and don't force any of these stretches. So just stretching to the point of tension and never pain on these movements. So you're just reaching towards that foot. If you can't reach the foot or the ankle, don't worry about it. Don't force the movement. So again, holding for about 30 seconds here, just helping these muscles to stretch out and kickstart that recovery. Good. Okay, Henry, you're going to switch legs. Opposite leg forward. You're going to push forward for that hip flexor stretch. If you're not feeling that, again, walk that front foot forward a little bit more. And just gently sitting forward. And let your torso come forward with you. You don't want to pull back on this movement. So just keep that spine neutral and hinge forward. Just trying to find that stretch on the front of that back leg. Again, using your breath, deep breaths into the nose, out through the mouth, remembering that that breath can help mobilize the joints and muscles. And sitting back for your hamstring stretch on this side. Again, reaching towards the foot, but not forcing the movement. If you can't reach the foot or ankle, just reach down along the leg as far as you can. If you find that the muscle is releasing out and you can reach a little bit further, take it that little bit further. And on each exhale, imagine that muscle relaxing. And relax. Perfect. Okay, let's face this direction for the next one, Henry. We're going to take it now to the inner thigh. Take your hands down in front. You're going to bring your left leg out to the side. Toes pointing forward. And you're going to press back, and you should feel this stretch along the inside of the left leg. If you're struggling to find that stretch, you're just going to walk the supporting knee out a little bit wider and gently press back into it. You can rotate through the torso and sink down into it if you want to find a little bit of a deeper stretch. Feeling that, Henry? Again, about 30 to 45 seconds. And you can switch legs. Good, okay, straight leg on the stretching leg. Sit back into it, try find that stretch along the inside of the leg. Again, if you're struggling to find that stretch, you can walk the supporting knee out a little bit more, or you can rotate your torso towards the supporting knee. Again, using your breath, relax the muscles on the exhale. Good. Okay, Henry, I'll get you to bring your hands to the front of the mat again. From here, you're going to lift onto your toes. Nice straight leg position. Walk back to a standing position. Trying to keep the legs as straight as possible. And we're just going to finish off. You can stay facing that direction, Henry. We're going to finish off with a quad stretch. So you're going to keep your supporting leg nice and soft on this. I want you to reach back, grab a hold of your foot behind, and pull your heel towards your back side. Now, as you're doing this, the supporting knee staying soft to stabilize, and pulling your heel nice and close to the back side. If your knee is out here in front, you're not going to feel that stretch. So pull it back in line with the opposite leg or back beyond it if you can. Also trying not to let that knee flare out to the side. So keep it centered, keep it pulled back, and hold that stretch on the quad. Again, 30 to 45 seconds, and switch it over. Soft supporting leg. Keep that balance. If you are struggling to balance here, you can just hold on to something and get that stretch. So again, knee centered, pull it back. Try not to let it come out in front. Try not to let it come out to the side. Pull it back, stay centered, and feel that stretch on the front here on the quad. Again, using your breath in through the nose, out through the mouth. And relax. Good. Okay, and that's it for our session today. Thank you very much for joining us, and looking forward to seeing you in the next session.